Hi, this is Ginger from In Sheep's Clothing Yarn Shop in Torrington, Connecticut, here to welcome you to a Focus on Fiber. I get lots of questions from knitters wanting to knit a simple shawl but don't know where to start. So today we're going to explore a few different types. Now, when you're doing a shawl, you have a couple different shapes that you can make. You can make a long rectangular shawl, which makes things easier. You can also do a triangular shawl like you're seeing here, and we have a triangular one here. That one's a triangular one as well. And there's just different shapings that you do to create those shapes. So I'm going to go over some of those shapes with the shaping with some of those different shapes. Now, it's easy when you're going to do a rectangle, because you can either, like this one that's right here, this just has some really, really pretty stitches that they do, and it's done the long ways. So you can just figure out how wide, the width that you want your shawl to be on you, and then just cast on the amount of stitches that you need for that. And then you can just figure out your lace pattern that will accommodate that width. And then you will knit as long as you want. Now, sometimes depending on the lace pattern that you might happen to have, you might want to do one side. Like say that you have a scalloped edge. See how we have a scalloped edge on this one here? And you want to mimic that scalloped edge on the other side. Well, sometimes because of the different lace patterns, you actually need to do one side, do the other side, and then either graft it or knit it together up the back. This one here, I think, was just knit from one end to the other end. Now, another way that you could do a rectangular scarf, a shawl or scarf, is if you were to cast on the full length of your shawl. And then just, you're going to knit the depth of it. So you won't be as much knitting this way, but you will have a lot more stitches to deal with. One way I like to do that, now again, another lace pattern if you'd like. You could even do something as simple as take something like this, where you see the ridges on here. Now this isn't a rectangular one, but see all those ridges? All you have to do is just do plain stockinette and throw a garter ridge every so often, and it gives you some interest. Another thing that you can also do, if you're in doing the little garter ridges there too, is do a knit two together yarn over. So you get a nice little eyelet scallop, not scallop, but a nice little eyelet going across. So that's another option that you could do too. Now, when you're also doing lengthwise shawls, you could also take advantage of, say that you have a lot of scrap yarn. This is a great way to use up scrap yarn and to make that type of a shawl, is take all your different colors, figure out how you want to arrange them knitwise, and then what you're doing is you knit across, and then every time you leave a nice length of tail, you knit a few rows or however many you want to do, and then when you finish off, leave a long tail. Join your new yarn, leave another long tail, finish with a long tail. What happens is you end up with finished, your fringes are already attached to the end of the shawl if that's what you want. And say that you did, like, you change colors every inch or so and you have gaps. Just take more yarn and just fill in the gaps with your fringe, and then just cut it even, and there you go, you're great to go. You already have a finished shawl. So that's pretty much for if you're going to do your rectangle shawls. There's also some interesting shapes that they have besides, that are kind of like in between a rectangle and a triangle. And I'm not quite sure what you call them. I'm sure it goes by whatever the shape is. Get that out there. But see this shawl that's right here? It has one straight edge, but what happens is you have a skinny edge here, You start here and you work your way and you increase along one side. Rather than both sides, you just increase across one. So it gives you this very, very interesting shape that you can kind of play with when you go to put it on yourself. This was a great, great shawl. Very easy, had garter stitch in between, very simple, pretty little lace. And then it ended with this very nice little kind of scallopy edge on here. It was fun to make. It also made really, really great use of multicolored yarns. And that's another thing too, is if you want to keep a very simple shawl, I mean, you could do absolutely minimal work, but if you use a multicolored yarn, it looks amazing. It looks like you spent so much time thinking about it and working on it. Now this shawl right here, this triangular, this is again another interesting shape. Not quite triangular, but it has what makes your shawls for when you're doing a triangular shawl is where you do your increasing and how you do your increasing. Now this has your typical center increase, which is done with a yarn over. So you have that increase there. Then you have another set on either side, and then on the other side you actually have, well, on the end of both edges you have another set of increases. So it gives you this very interesting sectioned off shawl rather than your typical just triangular. It does sit very, very nicely on your shoulders. So that's very, an interesting way to do it. And this also, because it's weighted with beads, when you put this particular shawl on, it just stays very, very nicely. So that's another option there. But if we're talking about simple shawls, this, even though it has your lace along the edge, if you look at the center part, that's a very simple beginning shape to do a triangular shawl. The one that's to the side of it's sideways, but we'll discuss that one later. But what I'm going to do is I'll start to show you how to do some very simple shapes so that you can go ahead and make one of your own shawls, and you don't have to have a pattern. Once you know some of the basic shapings, you can do your own thing. So I cast it on 3 stitches. That's typically what you're going to do for a triangular shawl, is just cast on 3 stitches to start out with. You want an odd number. So I have my 3 stitches cast on. And what I want to do for my first row is I'm going to knit the first stitch, and then I'm going to do a yarn over. Now, you could put a marker here if you want to, but in this case I'm just not going to, because the yarn over I'm going to be able to see it pretty simply. And then I'm going to knit into the center stitch. I'm going to do another yarn over, knit into the center stitch. Knit into my edge stitch. Now I have 5 stitches. It's kind of hard to see what's going on here. But on my next row, what I'm going to do is, this one I'll do in stockinette so that you can see it. So I'll be purling my next row. Oops. So we'll purl that first stitch. Now we get to the yarn over. I want to purl into that yarn over. So I'm going to purl the yarn over, purl my center stitch, purl my yarn over, and purl my last stitch. And now what's going to happen is, you'll see it better once we get moving a little bit further, but what's going to happen is we're going to have a center knit stitch, and see how we increased 2 stitches on either side? So now our next row, so what we want to do is we're going to increase on every right side row, and then just purl across on the next row. So I'm going to knit. I have an extra stitch now from that previous yarn over, so I'll knit that stitch. There's my center stitch, and this is where sometimes you might want to put a marker just to tell you where that center stitch is. I'm always going to want to do a yarn over in front of that marker. I'm going to slip my marker. I'm going to knit the next stitch, yarn over, and knit the remaining 2 stitches. And now I'll turn the work over, and now I'm just going to purl across. And I'll purl into those yarn overs. Now you might be watching some of my knitting and saying, why is she going through the back of her purl stitch? And I'm just realizing I have a funny way of purling. And I just realized that maybe what I'll do is I will, because I purl a little funny, sometimes I have to alter how I do my yarn overs. So I'll alter my yarn over on the next row, so it won't throw you off when my purl is a little weird for the yarn overs. Okay, so now we'll turn it over, and now you're going to start to see there's a yarn over on either side of my center knit. So we're always going to have a center knit stitch like we do, whoops, like we do on here. You see how there's a center knit going all the way down? And we have a yarn over on either side of that knit stitch. So that's what we're doing right now. And what happens is these 2 yarn overs create an increase. So instead of working straight, it's going to start going out like this, giving us our triangular shape. So you're just going to continue like that. And I'll do a few more so that you can really see the shape start to take place. Okay, so I knit into that yarn over. And let's see, I usually do my yarn, I'm going to do it this way. Slip my marker, knit my stitch, do my yarn over, and then knit across. And a good thing to do is to, every once in a while, just check yourself and make sure that you have the same amount of stitches on either side of that knit stitch. So let's see, we should have, I have, let's say 4, and I have 4. Okay, for a minute there, I thought I saw a wrong stitch, and I was like, I can't be wrong. Okay, so now I'm going to purl back. All right, so I'll purl back. And this really is not the way I normally purl, so I'm being good for you and the camera here so as not to get you confused. There we go. Whoops. Okay, so we purled across, and now you should be able to see better. Actually, if I bet you, if I laid across the table here, that would really show. But what's going to happen is you're going to see that center knit stitch and see those yarn overs on either side, and see how we have that nice triangular shape happening. Now, if you wanted to do this in all garter stitch, you could do that too. Or what you could even do is sometimes, you know, throw in, especially if you're doing a multicolored yarn, when it comes to a change in color, you might want to do just a row of garter stitch just to emphasize it. So I'm going to go across and get to my marker, whoops, do my yarn over, slip my marker again, knit 1. I mean, if you really, really wanted to, you could even put another marker there and know that you're going to do a yarn over before that marker, slip the marker, and then knit across. Markers are great, but just sometimes if I can see it, I don't feel like I need to have it. So now I'll just purl across, and we've got that shape, that beginnings for that triangle shawl. And then I'm going to show you another one. Okay. There's our center pearl. Slip our marker, and there's our yarn over. And you have to be careful that you go into those yarn overs correctly, because if you don't, you can actually close that yarn over up. I've had people do that and say, why is my yarn overs closed? They're gone. And that's when I discovered that I knit a little differently, because I would be closing up my yarn overs. So there we go. We have a nice little beginning for our shawl. Now, let's see. I'm going to take this off. I don't have scissors with me. So we'll just rip this out. We'll do it again. Go to our 3 stitches again. It's just easier just to cast back on again. And we'll do it a little different. And actually, I think the very first shawl I ever did was the version I'll be showing you. And I did it all in garter stitch. And it was out of my own hand-spun yarn. So I would spin a little bit, knit some, spin a little bit. I was very excited about doing this. But it was just very simple. It's just all garter stitch. I wanted the yarn to be the most important part. So with that, what I did was, again, I knit my first stitch. And then with this one, I did my yarn over. Let me do it the right way. Knit my center stitch, did my yarn over, knit my last stitch. Okay, that was just like what we did before. Now I'm going to purl across, but the third row is going to be a little different. So I'm going to knit that, purl that, sorry. Purl. Purl. Now I'm working with some short single point needles right now, but you might want to use a circular needle because your stitches are going to keep increasing and you want to keep adding to those stitches. Keep having enough room on your needle for all these stitches that you'll be getting. Okay, so now on this one, what I'm going to be doing is instead of doing my center yarn overs like you see here, I'm going to put them on the sides. It's still going to increase the same way. It's just that the edging will be a little different. So what I'm going to do is knit 1 stitch, do my yarn over, knit my next stitch. Actually, what I'll do is I'll knit to the last stitch, do a yarn over, and knit the last stitch. So now my yarn overs are going to be on my edges. So let me do a few rows of that so you can get the idea. Okay. Just purl across. And it's basically the same idea. You're just doing variations on the same theme. Okay, so, we have to do a little more before you can really kind of see it. So now, what I'm going to do is just continue doing the same thing. Knit the first stitch, do a yarn over after the first, knit the next stitch, and just knit across to the last stitch of the row. Do your yarn over and knit the last stitch. It's actually it's easy to remember that way. And then we're going to purl across. Okay. That's to the end. Okay, and then the last stitch, get tangled. Okay, now, so what's happening now is we have a yarn over at the edge, like that. And this is good. Now, what I did with my shawl was I did fringes, not on the top, but on the two edges. So what happens is this leaves the big holes on each side. So you can go right in and put your fringes on in through each one of those yarn overs. So you have a perfect placement for it. So now if say that you didn't want to put a fringe on there, there's another way that you could do this. And what you would do is you can knit 2 stitches, do your yarn over, knit to the last 2, let's see, 2 stitches, to the last 2 stitches, do your yarn over, and knit the last 2 stitches. Okay? Now when you go to turn, the only thing that's going to be a little different with this, and you might want to put a marker for this, is you knit 2 stitches. We're always going to knit the edges. It gives us a little edge. I'm going to put a marker there just to keep track of it. And now I'm going to purl across, starting with that yarn over, to the last 2 stitches of my work. Okay. This gives you a little more finished look, especially if you're not putting the fringes in. There we go. We've got to those last 2 stitches. Last 2 stitches. Just going to place my marker, and I'm going to knit those last 2 stitches. This way we have a little garter ridge. Now you can do as many stitches as you want for your edging. I think like even this one here might have had, let me see if I can see. Yeah, she probably had like 4 stitches. You can do 4 stitches at the edge too. It also depends on how heavy your yarn is and just what you want it to look like. So I'm just going to maintain the 2. So again, I start with knit 2 stitches. I'm going to do my yarn over, slip my marker, do my yarn over, knit to the last, knit to my marker. Here we go. I'm going to slip my marker, do my yarn over, and knit 2 stitches. And I'll purl the next row, and then you can really get a look at what this is doing. So again, knit my 2 stitches. I'm going to, I think I put my marker in the wrong place there. I'm going to purl this stitch. And actually, I should have put my marker here. There we go. And then I purl across to my last marker. Oh, I went back to my way of purling. Okay, I'm going to purl that, slip my marker, and knit my last 2 stitches. And now you'll be able to see how this looks. So see how you get this little yarn over edge here. It looks a little different. And then you have your little garter ridge at either end. And if you notice, there's no center increase there, but you're still getting your triangle shape. Okay. So what happens is you just continue in that manner, increasing 2 stitches on either side like that. Now, should you decide, you can also play around with your yarn overs and your increases. Say that you want a shallower, you want it to increase faster. No problem. You could do it every row, maybe in certain places if you want to. You could also cast on a couple extra stitches too, which will every other row, just so that you will keep getting more stitches this way. But that's basically it. It's very, very simple. The triangular is just very, very easy to go. And then of course, once you get to the top, you just do your bind off, and put your fringes on if you choose to or not. But like I said, if you do multicolored yarn. Super easy, gives you this incredible look without doing super anything super hard. Or even you can keep it just knitting, or just knitting, a combination of knitting and purling. But that's it. So you can whip up something really cute very easily, and you don't even need a pattern. You can just make your own. So I hope that this show was helpful and that you will consider casting on some stitches for your own new shawl. Thank you again for joining me, and please remember, keep that focus on fiber. See you the next time.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.